somewhere between 16,000 and 60,000 thoughts, and it's quite easy. A low number would be 70% of those are negative. And if that's the case, just think of what we're battling just within ourselves. How can we be a light, and how can we be salt to others if the self-talk we have is so negative? So make sure that your thought process is good. This is all going to tie together. Then last week I talked about that whatever you believe to be true is going to determine the choices you make in life. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's where you work, what school you go to, in your relationships, whatever you believe to be true. For instance, if you believe that a relationship is all about what the other person will give you in return for what you give them, some sort of a quid pro quo setup, you're doomed for failure in a relationship. You've got to understand that in any relationship that is going to last, that your mentality has to be, I'm going to give my all. And that's it. I'm going to give my all. Now, it's hard. Trust me. I mean, some of you have been married longer than me. But Kelly and I, we've been married now 28 years and been together 31 years. And it's not always easy. In fact, many times it's very difficult. But if there's that bedrock, if I believe to be true that God's way of keeping a relationship together, united, is true, then my choices in my life will follow that belief. If I think it's, God's got some advice, but some of it's good, some of it's not, then there's no telling what will happen in my relationships. So whatever you believe to be true is the direction your life will take. And then today I want to talk about the word transform. Because being transformed is the only way to know what God's will is for your life. Transformed. A biblical word for that, not the word we're going to look at this morning, but a biblical word for that is the word sanctification, which just means to be changed more and more into the likeness of Christ. So I want to start with a story that I found. I want to just read part of it, and then I want to come back to it at the end. Let me get my spectacles here. I know a teacher named Mrs. Thompson. Every year when she met her students, she would say, "Boys and girls, I want you to know that I love you all the same. I have no favorites." Of course, she wasn't being completely truthful. Teachers have students that they like more than others. In fact, some teachers have students that they just don't like at all. Teddy was a boy Miss Thompson just didn't like. His hair was unkempt. His clothes had a musty smell. He certainly wasn't an attractive boy. He wasn't likable. When she got his papers, she got a certain silent pleasure out of putting X's next to the wrong answers. Whenever she put an F at the top of the page, she always did it with a certain flair. And Miss Thompson had Teddy's school records, and so she knew more about him than she wanted to know. The records read like this. First grade, Teddy shows promise with his work and attitude, but he has a poor home situation. Second grade, Teddy could do better. His mother is seriously ill. He receives little help at home. Third grade, Teddy is a good boy, but he's too serious. He's a slow learner. His mother died this year. Fourth grade, Teddy is very slow, but well behaved. His father shows no interest. Christmas came one year, and the boys and girls in Miss Thompson's class brought her Christmas presents. They piled them high on her desk, and among them was one from Teddy. His was a gift that was wrapped in a brown paper bag and held together with some Scotch tape. On the package was written the simple words, "For Miss Thompson, from Teddy." When she opened Teddy's present, out fell a gaudy rhinestone bracelet, and half the stones were missing. And then there was also in the package a half a bottle of cheap perfume. The other boys and girls in Miss Thompson's class began to laugh over Teddy's gift. What does it mean if I say to you that we are called to be transformed, that God has called us to be transformed? He's given us the power to be transformed. What does that mean? How does one see transformed? How does one think transformed. How does one live a transformed life? Well, very simply, and this is really just the gist of the whole thing, is that from beginning to end, it's about grace. And so, when God established his system of grace, mankind was created in perfection in the garden. Mankind sinned and separated himself from God and died, essentially, spiritually. And God spent all of that time building the bridge back and began to give grace even from day one in the garden. What God expected from that grace was a metamorphosis. If you wondered what the backdrop was this morning as we sang, and you saw the caterpillar go to a cocoon, and then out of the cocoon comes the butterfly, that is the very definition of metamorphosis. That is to be changed from the inside out. I want you to look at a passage with me that is the basis of metamorphosis, at least for our discussion today, from Romans chapter 12. So before I put that up there, let me just give you just a smidgen of a background. If you've ever read Romans, you know it's not an easy book to read. It's not an easy letter to read. In fact, I always told the joke that in every place I ever worked as a minister, the beginning of the end of my tenure there was when I began to preach lessons from Romans. And at one church I got to Romans 4, and at one church I got to Romans 6, and at the church down the street where I last left I got to Romans 8. So I was increasing a little every time, which is good. But the reason that Romans makes people so uncomfortable is because I'm going to put it in a phrase that I heard on Friday as I met with a gentleman who has a downtown church in Birmingham. I won't go into details, but it's what they call an affirming church. Now you can go home and look that up if you need to know what that means, but I'm not going to talk about it today. But we were talking, he was asking for insight. He just wanted to meet with me. He said, I think you've got a lot of wisdom, and I'd like to just bounce some things off of you and talk to you about what it means to plant a church. And you guys have been there for 17 years and what I can learn from you. And the first thing out of my mouth was this. I said, okay, well, he told me a little bit of the background and where he came from, Assemblies of God, and then was a drama pastor in a Southern Baptist church, and they fired him, and so he went away from God and went away from church for a lot of years, and he came back and he wanted to start this downtown church that mainly ministered to people in downtown Birmingham. Either people who spent all night down in downtown Birmingham and living the high life, if you want to call it that, go home, sleep it off, and then but they're back downtown the next day looking for a place to eat. So they have church at 3 in this church. And he said, we just want to have this church where everybody's welcome. We want to have an open door kind of policy. I said, well, that sounds familiar. That's exactly what we try to do. He said, so what would you tell me? What would you say to me? If you could just give me some sentences, some ideas that would help me as I try to pastor this church. I said, it's easy. The very first thing I would tell you is grace is messy. Grace is messy. So that's the difference between a church that has an open door policy that says, come as you are, leave more like him. Because many religious institutions, whatever they may be, and this is not denominationally specific, but many religious institutions, they have all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed, and have a very structured and stricter way of doing things. And anyone who upsets the apple cart, so to speak, is not usually welcome there. But when you say, we welcome everybody, if you've got no place else to go, our prayer for years and years was, God, send us everybody that doesn't have a home anywhere else, that's been disenfranchised, that's been booted out, that's had the door slammed in their face. Anybody, send them to us. And I said, the other thing I would tell you after grace is messy is, if you pray that prayer, you better hold on. Because God is going to send you exactly the kinds of people you're asking for. And Paul talks about them in Romans 1 through 11. Essentially, Romans 1 through 11 says this. Man is a great sinner. Every person. Jew, Gentile, male, female, white, black, pink, purple, rich, poor, intellectual, or ignorant. Everybody has sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That is the essential message in 1 through 11. And then he goes through and shows exactly how God in Christ fixed the problem of sin and separation from God. Man being separated from God. Now, Paul does it in a very lofty way because he's writing to some fairly highly intelligent people. So if you read Romans 1 through 11, you may very well come to 11 and go, wow, holy cow, I'm not even sure if I understand everything I just read. But I just encapsulated for you what he did teach, and that is, in Christ, we are saved by grace through faith. If you want to just put one sentence, that's it. So when he comes to the end of 11, and he begins this new section in 12, he's looking back and he says, therefore, I urge you, my brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, because of everything I've just told you about God's mercy, which is not getting what you do deserve, and grace, which is getting what you don't deserve, in view of that, you got to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and to approve what God's will is, his good, his pleasing, his perfect will. So the question is, how does this happen? How does it happen that we are not conforming to the world, but are transformed? Or literally, it's not conforming, but transforming is how it literally reads. Because the ing means it's going on all the time. So how does it happen that you have a man who was a slave, as born into slavery, raised as a prince, kills a man, runs away, lives for 40 years, gets married, has children, takes care of the sheep of his father-in-law? How is it that that guy, who by his own self-reflection, his own self-identity says, I am not the person for this job in Egypt? How is it that that born a slave becomes the deliverer and the most well-known prophet in the history of the world? How does that happen? How does it happen that a young boy who is known for playing a harp, who is known for his ruddy, outdoor, handsome looks, how is it that he, above his 6 brothers in front of him, gets anointed to be king, and then silently ascends to the throne, and at every corner where the current king is trying to have him killed, will not raise his hand against that person, not even in self-defense, and becomes not only the most well-known king of all time, but also the most notorious? David is both famous and infamous. Young people, you know what infamous is? It's famous for all the wrong reasons. Famous king, infamous sin. How does that happen? And, to make sure you understand the conclusion of that statement, is called a man after God's own heart. Twice. How does that happen? How do you move from a Pharisee who is so self-assured that what he believes and what he teaches is right, that he can, in good conscience, stand by and watch Christians being stoned? Not only that, he's so excited. It's like sharks with blood in the water. He's so excited over the fact that these upstanding Jews are now killing these Christ followers. He goes to get letters so he can go kill some more up in Damascus. And along the way, the seedlings for the old Manfred Mann song come into being. That's way older than some of you people, some of you guys. Manfred Mann sang a song called Blinded by the Light. And that's what happens. How does it happen that you and me have gone from where we were then to where we are now? My favorite phrase in the New Testament, once but now. Once I was a sinner, lost, separated, alienated from God, but now I am a child of the King. I'm a member of the royal priesthood. I am a living stone in the temple of God. Amen. Once but now. Once but now. How does this happen? All of those stories and more. And the simple answer is grace. That's the simple answer. Simple to hear, simple to preach, hard to live. So let's talk about transformed. Back to that passage. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your thinking. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, His perfect, pleasing will. You'll be able to do that. So here's what that passage teaches us in 4 simple things. The first thing is you've got to adjust the way you see. You have to adjust the way you see. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy. Here's what that says. It says every single day, everything you do, from the time you get up in the morning and take your shower and eat your breakfast and get in the car and you go to school, you go to work, whatever you do, you have a chance right then. Every day that God gives us, we have a chance to put on the lenses of grace. Every day. Now, I'm just going to confess my sin. And Kelly's been very nice. She hasn't called me out on it, but I can see it in her eyes, and I can feel it in her tension when she's in the car. I have become, in the last 5 years, an angry driver. I'm just confessing. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I'm serious. My blood pressure, I know, is through the roof by the time I land in Birmingham and when I get back home. Because here's the thing. I don't encourage you to watch Ron White, but he's right. You can't fix stupid. And I experience it every day on the road. Every day. 700 miles a week. Every day. This morning, trying to get my mind ready. I'm a little tired. Didn't sleep great, so I'm a little tired. I'm driving down the road with Kelly, and these 18-wheelers, it's like they're playing Tetris. And I'm like in and slowed up, and I'm over like this, and Kelly's trying to lighten the mood. She says, yeah, it's like we're dodging in and out of trucks, and I'm fighting mad. Now, nothing happened today to make me that mad. It's just the cumulative junk that's going on every day of every week, of every month, of every year, back and forth to work. There's so many people that have to go back to driving school, but they won't. And I refuse to carry a gun. So all I do is I just get mad. And I've become, and I'm just confessing to you, I'm really not trying to be funny, I've become an angry driver. I am not choosing to wear the lenses of grace when I drive. I got to let it go. You're exactly right. I've got to let it go. It's only harming me. Isn't it amazing that really poor drivers, they don't ever really think about it. They're just happy in the lark. Driving 55 in the passing lane on their phone with their knee, eating a hamburger and putting on eyeliner. All at the same time. So, yeah, he's a man. That's the really sad thing. The point is, every day I have to learn to adjust the way I see. I have to, in view of God's mercy, in view of what God has done, that Larry said it is a game changer. It is a life changer. I no longer have the right, if I accept the grace given me. Thank you, God, for saving me. I'm singing about it on Sunday morning, and I'm preaching about it to all my brothers. Thank you for what you've given me. And then I go out and get in my car and get angry at everybody who doesn't drive according to the rules. Then number one, I can't fix that. It's out of my control. So the fact that I get that mad over it tells me that the problem lies with me. Yes, they should be better. Yes, but since I can't fix that, why am I getting so upset over that which I cannot control? I am refusing to adjust the way I see. Then when I get to work, I've got to make sure that everybody I encounter, everybody I talk to on the phone, my boss when he calls me in and slings all these new responsibilities on me, that I've got to thank you, Lord, that you trust me enough to give me these things. Not, holy cow, I can't even do what you've given me up to this point, and now you're giving me more. I have to adjust the way I see. You know why? Because the next step is most important. Because then I have to understand that my life is a sacrifice. This life is not about, my life is not about me. It's not about me. I don't care how good you are, how handsome or pretty you are, how many talents you have. All the stuff that God gave you, He gave you for one reason. He gave you talent on loan. He made a deposit in you, and now He's expecting you to make a deposit in the people around you, in communities, in individual life. However you do it, that's what it means to be a sacrifice. See, sacrifice means I give up something of value, that is my desires, my time, my money, things that I value, to gain something of greater value that I could not get unless I sacrifice. That's what sacrifice means. Now, you can read the Old Testament, you can read about those streams of animals going to the altar and cut throat and sprinkle blood and burn fat and all of that stuff. But all that was saying, God, accept this on my behalf because I know I can't pay for the sins I've committed. Then when Jesus comes along and becomes that sacrifice one time for all times, and now by faith in him, I no longer have to crawl onto an altar every day and give up my life so that God will be pleased. Jesus has already done that. He's already done it. So now my body, my life is a living sacrifice. Everything that I do is, what do sacrifices essentially do? They are put before God, and the aroma, here's that language we like to talk about. God smells it. The aroma is pleasing him. That's what. In other words, the sacrifice is to point to God and God to be pointed at what's being offered. That's what my life is designed to be. When I triangle myself in to whatever situation may be, that I'm supposed to be the one. That God, when he sees what I'm doing, says, that's a wonderful aroma in that life. That's why the Bible says that those who follow Christ, those who've chosen this life, are the smell of death to those who've chosen not to go, to not make this journey. Smell of life to those who are being saved. Smell of death to those who are perishing. That's what that smell language is all sacrificial. Even what Larry said in his prayer about the things that we say. Jesus on our lips. Hebrews makes it clear. The fruit of lips is praise to God. And that's all sacrificial system language. Now here's the problem. If we could jump right to the fourth one, everything would be golden. The problem is, once you change the way you see, so you're going to adjust in view of God's mercy, have the choices you're going to make, the words you're going to say, and then you give your life every day to people around you that you serve that will never, probably ever thank you. You do understand that the Bible is clear that when you give your life as a living sacrifice and you triangle yourself in and you help and you serve, you very likely will not get thanked for it. No one's going to recognize it. They're not going to build a statue to you. There's going to be any Nick Saban, marble things down in the middle of Denny Chimes. No one's going to do that. I mean, even Jesus, who could heal, had 10% that thanked him. And the other 9 ran off and, I'm healed. Didn't even thank him. So don't expect that you're going to get it. But here's the other thing. The world is going to interject itself. Satan has got his ploys. He's got his methods set up already, and the world is going to just do its best to get you to conform to their way of thinking, to its way of thinking. That's the design of the world. The world says, go for it right now. If it feels good, do it. Don't worry about if there's any rules or any moral implications. If it doesn't hurt anybody, go ahead. I mean, I could go on and on and on, and that has bled into the millennial generation. Now, thankfully, I grew up either as the very last baby boomer or the very first Gen Xer, but it doesn't matter. Where I was born in 66, in that culture, in that time, yes, there was upheaval. Yes, there was, the 60s and free love and Woodstock. I get it. But pretty much across the board, in that culture, there were moral absolutes about what was right and wrong. And I'm thankful that I grew up in that. Because even if I didn't always agree with what they were, I could clearly see that they were founded in Scripture. Whatever they were. But now I'm beginning to see more and more movement away from that, and sometimes it's getting watered down. I mean, it's amazing to me to watch a guy preach on TV to literally hundreds of thousands of people across the world. I've watched probably 24 sermons. Not one time have I ever heard a sermon on the cross. Not one time. Not one time. How is that? Now, I'm not judging that person. I don't know his heart. That's between him and God. All I know is I'm tasting the fruit of that tree. And if you're preaching all the time and you don't ever talk about the cross, something's bad wrong. And don't even get me started on this. If you do this, if you do that, if you do, then everything's just going to be copacetic. Everything's going to be wonderful. And life is going to be this ride. Since when has that ever been in Scripture? Ever. Ever. Let me tell you a little analogy. This is absolutely true. I read a story one time about a young man who he walked upon a cocoon, and when he walked up on it, the butterfly was struggling to exit. So you got caterpillar, right? You got cocoon, and you got this metamorphosis happening, and then just like a chicken leaving an egg or anything else from an egg is trying to get out, and it's struggling mightily to get out. And the person who saw, the young man who saw it, he thought, I want to help it. And his intentions were right. So he had this little, he had his knife, he got a real sharp knife, and he just made a little slit into the cocoon to help Help the butterfly get out. That's what he was trying to help. And the butterfly finally exited and fell to the ground. Never able to fly. Because what the young man didn't understand was that the struggle to exit the cocoon shed all the incubator stuff that goes on. And I'm not, I don't know anything about it other than what I've read, but it pulls all that stuff. It actually strengthens the wings of the butterfly so that in its mighty struggle to finally get out and be free, now it has the strength to fly. By him trying to help that butterfly get out, he killed it. Because it was the struggle that made it strong. It was the struggle that prepared it for life. God is pretty smart. And if the world is saying, just take it easy and get all that you can and do your thing, and whatever is good for you, don't worry about what anybody else says, and life is going to be good all the time if you do this, that. That's bull, is what that is. Because the struggle has always been, there has always been a time in the desert for believers, always. If I didn't have the Old Testament, if I didn't have Elijah, if I didn't have Moses, I would still know it because Jesus went there. The Son of God, after his baptism, at the high point of his adult life, he goes into the wilderness for 40 days to be tempted and tested and taken to the very edge of sanity. And it was that struggle that equipped him for ministry. So the world's going to say, take it easy, get all you can get. No, let me be, what I tell you young people, I've told you now 6 or 7 times. And yes, I'm a broken record. And yes, I'm going to keep saying it. I will never tell you anything that will harm you. So if you ever hear me say, oh, just do this and it'll be easy for you, and this will be easy, and that'll be easy, then you know either I'm out and out lying or I'm illustrating in a completely sarcastic way. Because everything the Bible teaches about this process is struggle and obstacle and hurdle and hurt and pain, and it's looking for what happens when you come on the other side of that. That's where God will deal with you in the valley. He will shape you and build you up in the valley. Yes, you're going to have your mountaintop here. I mean, the day I married Kelly, the day Aspen was born and Madison was born, Dakota was born, starting here with Crossview. But even the birth of Crossview was pain. 17 years, and you ought to hear the things people have said about us over 17 years. Early on, it hurt me deeply. I mean, it hurt me, then I got mad, now I just laugh. Yeah, I don't think y'all can go here. Go down to Crossview. They take anybody. You're exactly right. We do. Well, Randy, what would happen? What would happen if your church started filling up with prostitutes and drug addicts and homosexuals? I'd say we'd finally be the church Jesus built. Finally. The world's strategy says, no, don't do that. So here's the thing. You can do those first 2, but if you're not aware of the third, it's going to be very tough to get to the 4th. See that? Not conforming, but transforming. Nate, you need to write a song about that. You're a lyricist. Write a song with that. Not conforming, but transforming. Put that in a lyric in one of the songs you write. By the way, we're glad that you weren't hurt in your car wreck. We thank the Lord for that. That the not conforming, but transforming means I have got to let what we've been talking about on Wednesday nights happen. What Larry likes to talk about all the time. Let the Spirit remind me. Sometimes it's a whisper. Sometimes it's a full-on slap that says, this is the way you should go. That's wrong, Randy. You know that's wrong. Doesn't matter if everybody else is doing it. Doesn't matter if you don't get caught. That's what the world says. See, the world says that sorrow is when you get caught. See, you're doing it, you get caught. Oh yeah, now you're sorry. But godly sorrow says, even if I'm doing it, I know that what I'm doing is wrong, and so the sorrow is just amplified when I am caught. That is the difference. That's what it means to be transformed. It's just like that caterpillar to cocoon to butterfly. It is an ongoing process. And I will tell you that there's a lot of things that we're going to be able to do. There's a lot of goodness and abundance of life. We see it right over there from the fruit of the Spirit on the wall. There's a lot of things God can do with us, but we will not fully exit the cocoon of this life until we get home. Yeah. That is when we will flourish. That is when God, I think God's got some really cool game plans for us when we get there. I don't know what they are, but just based on the things I read, I think He's got some cool stuff. But much of what we do in this life will be that struggle to exit this life. I hadn't intended to say this, but just that way I phrased that reminded me of something that happened in the last few days. Debbie sent me a text, and a sweet girl that was part of her teaching ministry at Lifehouse, whom we partner with in Springfield, took her own life this week. Graduated the program, married a graduate, I think, wasn't he a graduate, or was he part of the program? Oh, she didn't. She left. She was in the program. I'm sorry, I misspoke. She didn't graduate. She left the program to marry, and had some, obviously had some trouble. Listen, hear me, please. You can go about 7 days without water. Jesus proved you can go 40 days without food. But you can't go 5 seconds without hope. That's what we're doing here. That's what God is trying to transform us into our reality. Is that, yes, there are going to be days where that exiting the cocoon feels like I can't struggle anymore. And it's at that point when you turn heavenward that God is saying, I'm glad you finally triangled me in. I'm glad you finally brought me in to the situation. Because it's in that state of struggle and heartbreak and pain that he reinstills in us hope. When he tells us what this is all about, really, where it is we're going. Where's my fork? Where's my fork? Pencil will work. I got a pocket knife that's really sharp. Let me finish this story.
Don't give him that stuff.
The other boys and girls in Miss Thompson's class began to laugh over Teddy's gift. But Miss Thompson quickly put on the bracelet, and she put on some perfume, and she held it up for the boys and girls to smell. And those boys and girls took their cues from Mrs. Thompson, and they responded with, ooh, and ah, and she said, oh, doesn't it smell lovely? And all the children agreed. At the end of the day, when school was over and all the children were leaving, Teddy lingered behind. And he finally came over to her desk and he said softly, Miss Thompson, you smell just like my mother. And the bracelet looks real pretty on you too. I'm glad you like my present. When Teddy left that day, Miss Thompson got down on her knees and she asked God to forgive her. The next day when the children came, they were welcomed by a new teacher. This Mrs. Thompson had become a different person. She was changed. She was transformed. There was a metamorphosis that happened. She was no longer just a teacher. She had become an agent of God. She was now a person committed to loving children and doing things for them that will live on after her. Let me say that again. Committed to doing things that will live on after her. That is called legacy. She helped all the children, especially Teddy. And by the end of the school year, all the children in her class had showed dramatic improvement, especially Teddy. He had caught up with most of the class and went ahead of some. She didn't hear from Teddy for a long time. Then she received a note one day that said, Dear Miss Thompson, I wanted you to be the first to know that I'm going to be graduating second in my class. Love, Teddy. 4 years later, she received another note. Dear Miss Thompson, they just told me I'd be graduating first in my class. The university has not been easy, but I wanted you to be the first to know. Love, Teddy. 4 years later, Dear Miss Thompson, as of today, I am Theodore Stollard, MD. How about that? I wanted you to be the first to know. And Miss Thompson, I'm getting married next month, the 27th to be exact. I want you to come and sit where my mother would have sat if she were alive. My dad died last year. You're the only family I have now. Love, Teddy. So Miss Thompson went to that wedding, and she sat where Teddy's mother would have sat. She deserved to sit there because of the time and the effort and allowing God's transforming grace to metamorphosize her, to transform her. I guess you could say it came down to Miss Thompson and one thing, a decision to embrace the grace of God and to be transformed. See, there's not a more powerful story that I could have written or found on my own that more perfectly illustrates what I wanted to say today. That is why we're here. And I know that Myra has done it for years. And I know that Kelly has done it for years. And Myra's been mama to more kids than she can probably count. Kelly has been mama to these high school kids and these peer leaders. They call her Mama Kelly. Listen, there is something bigger. It's always, if God is involved, it's always bigger than me. It's always bigger than us. And there are things that you and I won't even know that the impact we have will leave. And they will remain long after we're gone. Here's a kid who was dealt a tough hand. A mother that was sick. Sure, the father was caring for her. He gets sick and died. This kid had nobody. And because this teacher allowed herself to be transformed by grace, she transformed his life. I honestly believe that when we get to heaven, at some point, either through the fact that all things will be made known, but I like to think about, I don't know, fire pits and sitting around telling stories. I think we could probably spend half an eternity, whatever that amount would be, with God telling us stories of the people that have been impacted by the things that we did in life and had no clue that they were being touched. Every single day, pick up the lenses. In view of God's mercy, this is how you live. Because you don't ever know what kind of impact you're going to make long after you're gone. So let's pray. God, in honor of your grace and the love that you have and the love of your Son for us and the willingness to die on our behalf and to give us a life code and a compass and a map and all the instructions that we need for life and godliness, we commit to you today to be transformed. God, it starts with me. I do not want anyone to see me standing up here and think I've got it together. I don't. I struggle mightily with doubt and with anger when I'm driving and with stress from projects I don't think I'm equipped to handle and care for this church and trying to stay connected. I mean, just on and on. And God, it's in the midst of that kind of, I don't know, thorn in the flesh that I've been crying for you to remove. That you're whispering through your word and through your spirit, my grace is sufficient and my power is made perfect in weakness. That I've got to live and I've got to embrace and accept. So today, if anyone today has been thinking that they had to get their life straight and make all the right decisions before they could finally come to you, God, I pray that they would be convicted right now to just lay that down on these old carpet that's been here a long time. And it's captured a lot of tears and a lot of sins have been confessed and left here. And I just pray for anyone who needs to do that today will confess their sins, that they will speak your name, that they will invite you in, that they will seal the deal in the believer's wedding ceremony, in baptism, buried in death, and raised to walk in newness of life and be transformed. It doesn't happen overnight. I'm so thankful that I'm not where I was, and I'm so grateful that you're taking me to some place far from where I am now. Yeah. God, the journey has been good, but it has been hard. And we know it'll continue to be hard. It'll be a struggle, and we're strengthening our wings, and we are preparing ourselves. You are preparing us for those around us. So every day, God, help us to pick up those lenses of grace and let you transform us from the inside out. And all God's people who agree in Jesus' name say, Amen. I just want to say thank you, especially to teachers, but anyone who has placed themselves in the gap between where especially kids are now and where they will be. I thank you for that. You're underpaid, you're underappreciated. Shame on us. But all I can tell you is the last will be first, and whatever you have done to impact people for eternity in this life, God will pay back 100-fold. I don't know what that will look like, but I trust that that's the truth, because that's what he says. So thank you, and all of you that are every day, I hate to use this term, but I do it every day, run interference. For all of you who are running interference for God, thank you. It is most often underappreciated, if appreciated at all. Scotty?
Randy, I've said it before, but A lot of churches, we have announcements kind of at the end, so somebody can tell you what a phenomenal job you did. So we don't do that. So I just want to tell you, it's a blessing to be here today and to hear that message. You did a phenomenal job, as you always do. There's about 70 churches. Nate and I were talking last night. I think there's 70 churches in this county.
70?
70. Wow. I promise you, everybody here, I promise you cannot get what you get here at any of those churches. So
That's a nice thing to say. I appreciate that. Yes, Scotty, I appreciate you saying that, but I'd like to clarify, and I'm so glad that Cody is here today. Cody and I go back quite a few years. He was one of my first students at Bevel, and certainly one of my best students ever. And he's seen me. You were a great student. I say that in all seriousness, but he's seen me up close and personally, seen me from a distance, and he's seen the journey. And Scotty, I would say, I don't know who said it, but whoever it was that said, I am a great sinner, but I serve a great God who gives me great grace. And I've been told more than once that I had always been, an okay, a decent speaker, but I never really was a full-fledged pastor until I sifted through the rubble. And I don't wish that on anybody, but if that's what it takes as part of the exiting from this cocoon, then I may not like it, but I accept it. So, but I love all of you. You have no idea how much this church is a lifeline to me. You probably would read about me on the evening news if I didn't have this church, because I probably would carry a gun and I probably would be involved in road rage at some point. But because I know you're holding me accountable, I just want you to know how much I love you. It's been phenomenal.
Your wings should be pretty strong.
They're getting stronger. They're definitely getting stronger. But so glad that you were all here today. And so just as a reminder, let's go ahead, mark your calendars 2 weeks from today. We'll do Senior Sunday, we'll do the slideshows, we'll do the Bible presentation and introduction of all the kiddos, and then we'll eat together. So that'll be 2 weeks from today. Okay. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. God bless you.
I love you.
I love you. Have a great, great day.
Hey, Bruce.